The flickering gaslight threw long, jittering shadows across the faces of Japan's Supreme War Council. It was August 7, 1945, and the underground bunker beneath the Imperial Palace felt suffocating, heavy with a tension that seemed almost alive. Just hours earlier, a single cryptic message had arrived from Hiroshima. A new type of bomb, an atomic bomb, had obliterated the city. Not a rumor, not an exaggeration, but a fact that defied comprehension. Around the polished table, the men tried to maintain calm, but their eyes betrayed disbelief and fear. How could one bomb erase a city in an instant? How could human ingenuity produce something so powerful that it made decades of military preparation seem meaningless? Admiral Soemu Toyoda, chief of the Naval General Staff, cleared his throat, staring down at a sprawling map of Japan. "Gentlemen, the reports from Hiroshima are devastating. Our reconnaissance confirms near total destruction. The Americans claim a single bomb did this." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We thought it was propaganda, but now I fear it is real." For a moment, none of them spoke. Each man grappled silently with the enormity of the situation. Could it be true that everything they had believed about war, about courage, about strategy, was about to be rewritten? General Korechika Anami, the war minister, a man known for his unwavering loyalty to the emperor, finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost eerily so. "Propaganda or not, the destruction is undeniable. But one bomb, one plane could achieve this. Our scientists assured us such a weapon was decades away." Field Marshal Shunroku Hata, commander of the Second General Army, rasped as he added his own report. "I flew over Hiroshima. There is nothing left. No buildings, no streets, nothing but a scar on the earth. The heat, the blast, it is beyond anything I have ever seen." Silence fell, broken only by the distant drone of Allied bombers overhead. These men had fought a war rooted in spirit, honor, and bushido, the belief that courage and willpower could overcome steel and firepower. But now a single act of unimaginable power threatened to shatter everything they believed. Minister of Foreign Affairs Shigenori Togo leaned forward, his tone pragmatic but grim. "Regardless of the weapon, the effect is clear. This changes everything. The Americans can destroy our cities at will. We must consider our people, the civilians."
Toyota tapped the map, tracing the lines of cities and strategic points. "We have tracked American industry for years, believing that strategy and skill could overcome numbers. But the scale, it is staggering." He pulled out charts showing the expansion of the American fleet. In 1941, at Pearl Harbor, they had 7 carriers. We thought crippling them would buy time, perhaps even peace. By 1943, they had doubled that. Today, over 24 fleet carriers and 74 escort carriers. 74! And while we struggle to replace one lost ship, they build entire fleets. Anami's defiance surfaced briefly. "Numbers alone do not win wars. Our pilots have skill and courage." Toyota's voice hardened. "And yet those pilots are finite. Every loss is irreplaceable. The Americans train thousands more every month. 5,000 planes a month, while we manage only 500. They don't repair, they replace. They don't wait, they strike." A question hung in the air, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. Could courage alone ever overcome this kind of overwhelming power? Togo added, grimly, "And do not forget the other front. The Soviets are massing in Manchuria. We gambled on their neutrality. That gamble has failed." The room grew colder with the weight of that truth. Two fronts, two overwhelmingly powerful enemies. Japan, already exhausted and stripped of resources, suddenly faced a reality too terrible to ignore. Even as they argued strategy and numbers, there was an unspoken fear creeping into every mind that the Japan they knew, the proud, indomitable empire, might not survive what was coming. And the terrifying reality was beginning to sink in. The enemy they had underestimated was not just strong, it was limitless. August 8th arrived like a hammer blow. The Soviet Union declared war on Japan. Two fronts, two overwhelmingly powerful enemies. Japan, already exhausted and stripped of resources, suddenly faced a reality too terrible to ignore. The room fell silent. The men around the table understood the implications immediately. Soviet forces, battle-hardened and massive, were advancing from the north, while the Americans already dominated the skies and the seas. Japan now faced not one, but two unstoppable forces converging on their homeland. Toyota leaned over his maps, tracing the lines of possible defense. "We are outnumbered, outproduced, and outmatched. Our fleets, our pilots, even our soldiers, they are finite. Their resources are infinite." Anami shook his head, a flicker of defiance still burning. "We are not powerless. Our homeland defense, our people, they will fight to the last. We can still inflict terrible casualties on an invading force." But intelligence reports told a different story. Operation Downfall, the American plan to invade Japan, would bring millions of troops, thousands of ships, and an aerial armada the world had never seen. Every report, every calculation painted the same picture. Japan could not survive a full-scale invasion. Leaflets dropped over Japanese cities had initially seemed like propaganda, easy to dismiss, but now they were chillingly accurate. They didn't just warn. They detailed the factories, the production lines, the endless supply of men and machines. One translated report highlighted the Manhattan Project, noting it alone had cost the United States more than Japan's entire national budget for war in 1944. Could a nation already stretched to its limits hope to compete? Toyota remembered a conversation with a young naval engineer, one of the few who dared speak bluntly. "Admiral," he said, "we build ships in weeks. They build them in days. We repair a damaged carrier in months. They launch a new one in weeks. Their industry is a volcano, endlessly erupting steel and machines, while ours is a flickering candle in a hurricane." The words reverberated in Toyota's mind. For decades, they had relied on courage, training, and tactical brilliance. But the enemy's strength was no longer measured in skill or bravery. It was measured in production, resources, and relentless capacity. Could spirit alone ever defeat an industrial hurricane? And then, on August 9th, the second blow came. Nagasaki. Another atomic bomb. The devastation confirmed the terrifying truth. America possessed not one, but multiple weapons of unimaginable destructive power. The message was clear, brutal, and impossible to ignore. Even the emperor, normally a distant observer in these councils, began speaking urgently about the suffering of his people. His words carried weight far beyond strategy or numbers. They were moral, emotional, and impossible to ignore. Slowly, the stubborn resolve of the military began to crack. Anami, the warrior, the man who had believed in honorable sacrifice above all else, started to falter. Could glory survive against total annihilation? Could honor mean anything if millions of civilians died in the process? Intelligence reports poured in, each more damning than the last. Detailed accounts of American factories, training programs, and aerial production made one thing painfully clear. Japan's losses were irrecoverable, while the enemy's strength grew every day. Courage and skill alone could not stop an endless wave of machines, men, and weapons. The Council wrestled with a horrifying truth. The war Japan thought it could win through strategy, courage, and tradition was already lost. The enemy was not just strong, they were unstoppable, and their power had barely been unleashed. August 14, 1945. The Supreme War Council had been meeting almost continuously for days, but tonight the tension in the bunker was unbearable. Every man knew what the discussion would lead to, yet the weight of it pressed on them like a physical force. The nation's survival hung by a thread, and the threads were fraying fast. General Korichika Aname, once the embodiment of warrior resolve, sat motionless, staring at the maps and reports scattered before him. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, endless American production lines, the Soviet armies pressing from the north. Could the homeland, with its proud history and disciplined people, survive an invasion that would bring millions of enemy soldiers to its shores? He had spent a lifetime believing that honor and courage could turn the tide of any battle, that the spirit of the Japanese soldier, disciplined, unyielding, and fearless, could overcome even the most overwhelming enemy. But now, confronted with the full scale of America's industrial and military might, and the sudden entry of the Soviet Union, that belief was being tested as never before. The Emperor, usually silent in these deliberations, spoke with an intensity that cut through the stubborn pride of the council. His concern was not for strategy, not for numbers, but for the suffering of his people, the civilians, the women and children, the elderly. Can we continue this war without destroying the nation? His words echoed in the bunker, simple, yet devastating in their clarity. The room fell silent. No charts, no intelligence reports, no careful calculations could answer that question. Only truth could, and truth had a price too high to bear. Aname's mind raced. Could he reconcile his duty as a soldier with the undeniable fact that continued resistance would lead to total annihilation? Could he face the Emperor and admit that all the bravery, all the sacrifices, all the honor they had clung to could not protect their people?
The reports were relentless. Intercepted communications, neutral intelligence, eyewitness accounts. Each one painted a picture of impossible odds. The Americans were not only fighting, they were holding back. The atomic bombs had already proven that. What else had they not yet unleashed? The council debated, argued, and pleaded. Some still clung to the notion of a final stand, a glorious sacrifice that would at least allow them to die with honor. But the facts were indisputable. Operation Downfall would not be a battle. It would be annihilation. Millions would die, cities would be leveled, and the very fabric of the nation would be destroyed. Finally, Aname requested an audience with the Emperor. Alone, in the quiet, dimly lit room, he confessed what no man in the council could openly admit. The military could no longer continue the war. The sacrifices already made had not been enough. The enemy's strength was limitless. Continued resistance would only bring about the destruction of Japan itself. Tears filled his eyes as he spoke. For the first time in his life, the warrior admitted defeat, not in battle, but in strategy, in understanding, in facing reality.
The emperor, listening quietly, understood the depth of the decision Anami was making. Together, they confronted the ultimate truth. Japan could survive only by surrendering. Later that night, the Supreme War Council convened for the final time. The room was divided, exhausted, and haunted by the images of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Some still argued, clinging to pride and honor, but the majority saw the truth. Surrender was not betrayal. It was the only path to saving millions of lives. Anami, once the voice of resistance, stood and endorsed the surrender. His face was etched with sorrow, the weight of a nation's fate pressing down on him. He understood the cost, for himself, for the soldiers who had trained under him, for the generations that would judge this moment. But he also understood the greater cost of continuing the war, the complete destruction of Japan, and the end of the imperial institution itself. Before dawn on August 15th, Anami committed ritual suicide, leaving behind a farewell note that read, "I, with my death, humbly apologize to the emperor for the great crime." But his true crime, as he understood in those final hours, was not losing the war. It was allowing the nation to cling to illusions of power, to underestimate an enemy whose strength was revealed too late. The next morning, the emperor addressed the nation, announcing Japan's surrender. Millions listened in shock, disbelief, and sorrow. Cities lay in ruins. The future was uncertain. But in the underground bunkers of Tokyo, the true defeat had already occurred. The shattering of illusions, the agonizing realization that courage, honor, and tradition alone could not withstand modern industrial warfare. Reconnaissance pilots flying over Hiroshima and Nagasaki reported back in chilling simplicity. The cities are gone. They are simply gone. The psychological collapse of the high command had been slow, agonizing, and complete. They had built their strategy on myths, that spirit could overcome steel, that honor could compensate for numbers, that sacrifice alone could repel an industrially superior enemy. Every assumption had been shattered, every comfort of self-deception stripped away. The reality was undeniable. America had not just defeated Japan, they had revealed the flaws in their strategic thinking, and they had held back their full power. In those quiet, flickering bunkers, Japan's leaders faced the hardest truth of all. The war was over, and victory had been impossible from the start. But the lessons endured. Wars are not won on courage alone. They are won in factories, in the minds of leaders, and in the cold, unyielding calculations of reality. The story of Japan's final days is not just about surrender. It is about the crushing consequences of underestimating an opponent, the dangers of clinging to illusions, and the terrifying cost of delayed recognition. It is about the moment when reality crashes into belief and the unimaginable truth becomes undeniable. Could the leaders have acted differently? Could they have seen the true scale of the enemy earlier and saved millions of lives? These questions linger, haunting history. But one thing is clear. In those final days, Japan's high command finally understood what the world had long known. Industrial power, relentless strategy, and the willingness to wield terrifying weapons would define the outcome of modern war. Spirit, courage, and tradition alone could not. And as the smoke cleared over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as the Soviet armies advanced, and as the shattered nation began the slow, painful path to peace, one truth remained. The real defeat had not been in the skies or on the seas, but in the minds of those who had believed that courage could stand alone against the unstoppable tide of reality.
Thank you for watching and spending your valuable time with us. If you found this journey through Japan's final days of WWII fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and loved ones.
Your support helps us bring more historical stories to life.